one good thing about Iowa was that the graduate students, I was a graduate student, were a close-knit group and they helped each other.
Mm-hmm.
There, for example, I came back and it was, I had to take the second semester of a math logic that Bergman was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't have the first semester, man.
Uh-huh.
That was not good. It was on the liar paradox.
Okay.
You know, impredicativity. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Jeez. You know, and that semester, I was also taking, or maybe it was the next semester, a course with another Bergman student. Laird Addis was his name, and on the philosophy of time.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know anything about the philosophy of time. And we were using Gale's anthology, The Philosophy of Time,
mm-hmm.
which, and he had just published his book, The Language of Time, which both of those books were very influential in, well, where do you think the B theory and the A theory come from? I mean, McTaggart he talks about the A series and the B series, but he doesn't talk about the A theory and the B theory.
Yeah.
He talks about Russell.
Yeah.
But he talk about A theory. Okay, there are these two theories. No.
Was it Gale who?
Yes.
Who coined the A and B theory?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And you know, one of the main ways in which he characterized the difference was in terms of you know, the A theory says that statements that express B relations, earlier, later than simultaneity relations amongst events, statements can be reduced to statements that just involve the tenses.
Mm-hmm. Can you briefly tell us what A statements, A properties, the A series is? For those
Yes. So A and B.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are they?
A is when we talk about events, a natural way. Well, I went to Iowa in the past, but no matter how you slice it, my going to Iowa occurred in the past.
Yes.
All right, and then we're talking now in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And tomorrow or next week, or whenever it is, when we have our second talk,
mm-hmm.
going to be in the future. So, you know, one way of thinking about time or events in time is in terms of placing them as past, present, or future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as Augustine said, you know, we learn on our mother's knee that time contains a past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
So when McTaggart spoke about the A series,
mm-hmm.
talking about events that are in a series that are ordered by past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
That's the A series.
Yeah.
And the B series, you know, for example, I might say, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Okay. And or I might say, it's been a long time since I've seen you, something like that, or I had my breakfast before I had my lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the idea of so not only do we order events in terms of what McTaggart called the A series of past, present, future, we also order them in terms of what he called the B series.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we say one event is earlier than the other. Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, you'd think, okay, where's the problem in that? But you'll see, okay? And what could be more obvious intuitively that some events are earlier than the others, some events are later than the others, on the one hand. Those are called B relations, earlier and later, B relations after McTaggart's B series. And some events are past, present, future. And we order events in that way. Which way you could put it is more fundamental. Is time really past, present, future? Is time really earlier and later? Is one more fundamental than the other? Are they both equally fundamental? What is it for an event to be past or present or future? Okay. So, if you take pictures of my life at various times.
Yes.
If you take pictures at various times and you see them, you could say that they reflect the idea that time passes. Okay, so if we're asking what time is, you know, it's natural to say the essence of time is that time passes, passage. But what is the passage of time?
What does it mean?
What does it mean? I mean, of course, that's a tricky way of putting it, because what does mean? You know, it's like it's like Clinton. It depends what you mean by is. You know. But if you take if you look at the history of my life up to now as a series of pictures, you could see, in a sense, that time has passed. That's what time is. These different pictures of me at different points, you could see how different I look and everything. Time has passed. That's what the passage of time is. But you might say, or I would say, that there's something missing from that picture. And what's missing is the passage of time, because what you're looking at is just sort of a static, fixed image of me at different points in my life. There's no where's the dynamic aspect? Where's the idea that time is flowing? You know, is moving? Where's the sense of passage? And so one idea about this. All right, so if you know, the pictures of me are just pictures of my past, or maybe right now this could be a picture of my present. But time has a past, present, and future. And just to get the idea of what I'm talking about, you know, you could view a whole life in terms of the past, present, future, but that still doesn't give you the passage of time. That you need something more to get this flow, because this is just a static picture of this. It's this time. But where's the idea that time is passing, or that I'm passing through time, or something like the passage of time? You have to explain that if you're going to explain what time is.
Yeah.
So McTaggart has this argument. Broad considers this argument. Or just consider this argument. Look, you spread the history of your life out to past, present, future, and each slice of your life, each stage of your life is either past, present, right now, or future. All right. Now let's suppose, as some philosophers certainly have done, that that pastness, presentness, and futurity are properties. You know, for example, I might say I'm looking at your colorful shirt, and I could say that is, you know, part of your shirt is red.
Mm-hmm.
That Emiliano's shirt is red in part. Okay, so in that case, I am attributing the quality of redness to your shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how that's analyzed is, you know, but we don't have to worry. It's sort of obvious. You know, this is red.
Yeah.
It's saying that redness is a property of the shirt.
Yeah.
So now suppose we think, as philosophers have done, that pastness, presentness, and futurity are non-relational, intrinsic properties of time slices, or, you know, stages of your life.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, there's what I'm saying is that is not enough to give you passage.
No.
So so if you don't have passage, you have time. So that past, present, and future itself, those properties, it can't be what time is. I mean, you know, right, because you can have those properties and not have time.
Yeah.
So one question arises as, well, what more do you need to get time and passage than those properties? But I think it's an important point that those properties themselves are not enough. Okay, so what you could say is that the events, the stages, the slices that have these properties must change with respect to those properties. Okay, so you call what more is necessary in order to get passage from merely the terms having the non-relational properties of past, present, and future is temporal becoming. And by temporal becoming, okay, this is the adding ingredient, I mean that the terms of the A series changing their temporal properties. So it's, you know, it's future, and then it loses that property, hands it over to the next one, and it acquires the property of being less future or something like that. And eventually the event which had the property of future has the property of being present, and then it's the property past.
That's the way.
So there you get the idea of flow, you get the idea of motion, you get the idea of time being dynamic, there being some flow to it. The events are, they're actually passing. Passage is an objective feature that's understood in terms of the change of these properties. Now, but you need something more. So what more you need is temporal becoming. Temporal becoming is the event that has the property of being future, losing that property, acquiring the property of being present, and losing that property and having the property of being past. So that's what temporal becoming, and that does give you a flow, gives you a change, and that's, you know, it's not simply a static past, present, future, this is it. Okay? And that would be great if it was true. It's not true. Sorry. No, but the point is, I mean, I'm being presumptuous. But this is the point that I want to make. You know, why isn't that? But that does not give you, even that doesn't give you passage. And the reason why it doesn't even give you flow. It gives you one complete, total absurdity. Oh, that's bad, right? That's well, I don't know. I didn't read your paper on contradictions. So I shouldn't, I can't, you know, I don't want to be presumptuous, but, you know, the passage of time, insofar as time involves past, present, and future, involves more than past, present, and future. It involves temporal becoming. Temporal becoming involves events that are past, present, and future, changing with respect to their temporal property, changing from being future, being present, being past, which are properties of the events. So it's part of the essence of the event that it has one of the other of these properties. Now, I ended by saying, screaming that that's absurd, that doesn't answer anything. And you could say, well, because that an event can no more be past, present, and future than a shirt could be red and green all over.
Mm-hmm.
Because, if it's red all over, then it's not green anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, if it's past, then it's not present.
Mm-hmm.
Or if an event undergoes temporal becoming, then it has properties that it can't have. It has incompatible properties. So, temporal becoming, while it may seem to give you passage, can't really give you passage because it's not possible for one event to be past, present, future.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, that account of passage, just where we are. So this is the dialectic. Yes, time involves past, present, but that doesn't give you change. It doesn't give you passage. So we'll have the events of the past, present, future passing from one temporal modality to the other. And that'll give you passage. The event is future and it moves to the present, it goes in, that gives you passage.
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself won't do either, because how could you have a single event being past, present, and future? Now, you need something more to at least avoid the contradiction. Mm-hmm. And what you need more is time.
Yeah, because they have to be so successively, of course. They must be first, future, then present, and then past.
At different times.
Yeah, at different times. Yeah.
So the question is still, how do you understand time?
We're back again. Yeah.
What is time? Past, present, future. And so we still haven't. And see the thing that I would say without justifying free country. So I'll say it even if I can't justify it. I think that I think I could give some arguments to support it, but this is my overarching view.
Mm-hmm.
The view that so I call this the full future view, the view that the A series exists.
Mm-hmm.
Events as past, present, future. That view could not be what time is, because it doesn't explain passage.
Mm-hmm.
And if you introduce an analysis in terms of the terms having past, present, and future, and then becoming, changing, that doesn't give you passage either.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gives you a contradiction unless you introduce time.
Yeah.
And so, what is time? So my and then you could answer, well, with respect to those times, what they are, but and then you're still stuck with the same problem, it seems to me, if you're going to treat time in terms of past, present, future.
Mm-hmm.
And that also with respect to the other views of time, or at least the general format of them, which might be called the open future view, where the future doesn't exist, but the past and the present view, or the presentist view,
mm-hmm.
that all these views presuppose time. I mean, it needs to be argued, but, you know, we're trying to understand what time is by understanding what the passage of time is.
Mm-hmm.
But views that attempt to explain what time is, what the passage of time is, in terms of past, present, future, or just the present, or just the past, then present, assume in their explanation the existence of time.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't get us anywhere. So if you want to come up with a proper understanding of time, the understanding of time must be something that is timeless. But nobody should believe me. Yeah.
Until next week.